The little bell above the bakery door chimed cheerfully as Isabella pushed through the glass door, holding firmly to the hand of her 5-year-old son, Danny. The smell of freshly baked bread and warm croissants filled her lungs, offering a brief moment of comfort against the bitter March wind cutting through the streets of Krakow. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. The bakery was almost empty, just an older woman at the counter, carefully choosing rolls for tomorrow's breakfast. Isabella nodded as Danny tugged at the sleeve of her faded blue jacket, the same one she'd worn for 3 winters in a row, because there had simply been no money for a new one. "Mama, can I have a chocolate one?" Danny asked in Polish, with a slight Italian accent, pressing his small finger against the glass case where the chocolate-glazed donuts sat on display. "Let's see, sweetheart. First we need to buy bread for dinner," Isabella answered quietly, running a hand through her dark hair, so similar to his. No, she couldn't think about that. Not now. Not ever. She stepped up to the counter, smiling at the young cashier who had just finished with the older woman. Isabella was in the middle of ordering a loaf of rye bread when she heard it. A voice, deep, velvet smooth, coming from somewhere behind her. "Un cornetto semplice, per favor." Italian. Someone was speaking Italian. In this small bakery, on the outskirts of Krakow. Isabella froze. Her fingers closed around her purse so tightly her knuckles went white. It couldn't be him. It was impossible. Milan was over 1,000 kilometers away. For 6 years, she had been so careful. She changed her name. She used only cash. She avoided social media. She never, not once, spoke Italian in a public place. "Mama." Danny looked up at her, his little face tight with worry, sensing the tension coiling through her body. Isabella forced herself to breathe. It was paranoia. Just some Italian tourist. Krakow was full of tourists, especially now that winter was slowly giving way to spring. Slowly, she turned her head. Just a fraction. Just enough to make sure it was a stranger. But when her eyes landed on the man standing 3 meters behind her, time stopped. Dante Ferretti. He stood there in a perfectly tailored dark suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her salary. His hands rested casually in his trouser pockets. His black hair was cut short at the sides, slightly longer on top, and there were silver threads at his temples now, threads she didn't remember. His jawline was as sharp as ever, dusted with stubble. And those eyes, those dangerously dark espresso eyes, they were already on her, with an intensity that made her feel completely exposed. Their gazes collided. She watched a wave of emotion move across his face. Recognition, triumph, something that might have been pain. And then, the cold, calculated control that had always defined him. He didn't look surprised, not even slightly. He looked like a predator who had finally cornered his prey after a very long hunt. "Isabella." He said her name softly, but in that single word lived so much possession, so much unfinished business, that her knees nearly buckled beneath her. The cashier said something in Polish, but Isabella couldn't hear it. Her mind was screaming a single word. "Run." She grabbed Danny and stepped back, her body instinctively shielding her son. "No," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "You can't be here." Dante took one step toward her, fluid, controlled, like a great cat circling its prey. 6 years, Isabella. 6 years I've been searching for you across all of Europe. Please." Her voice broke. "Please, just leave us alone." And then, Dante looked down. He looked at the small boy clinging to his mother's leg. The boy staring up at him with wide, brown eyes. Eyes that were unmistakably, heartbreakingly similar to his own. Isabella watched Dante's face go pale. She watched his jaw tighten. She watched something fundamental shift in his expression, something that couldn't be undone. "How old is he?" Dante asked. His voice was dangerously quiet. Isabella said nothing. She didn't need to. Dante was intelligent, too intelligent. She could see him doing the math in his head, assembling the pieces of a puzzle he'd been carrying for 6 years. "How old?" he repeated. This time his voice was steel. 5. She whispered, knowing there was no point in lying. "He's 5 years old." Something raw and primitive crossed Dante's face. Something that looked like fury and disbelief at the exact same time. 5, he repeated slowly. "You were pregnant when you ran. You were carrying my son." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "You were carrying my son, and you said nothing." "I had to." Tears burned at the back of Isabella's eyes. "Your world, that life, I couldn't raise a child inside that. I couldn't. You couldn't tell me? Dante's voice rose, and the cashier looked over, alarmed. Two customers who had just walked and stopped in their tracks. You couldn't give me the choice? What choice? Isabella's voice rose to match his. 6 years of fear and loneliness came flooding to the surface all at once. The choice to raise our son surrounded by violence and death, to wake up one day and discover someone used him against you. Excuse me, is everything all right? The cashier asked in Polish, her voice laced with concern, watching their increasingly tense exchange. Before Isabella could respond, Danny began to cry, silent, shaking sobs that moved through his little body like tremors. Mama, I want to go home, he said in a small, trembling voice. Isabella immediately crouched down and gathered him into her arms. It's okay, sweetheart. We'll go home soon. I promise. You're not going anywhere. Dante's voice was final, absolute. Isabella looked up at him and saw the determination etched into every line of his face, and it terrified her more than any direct threat ever could. This wasn't anger. This was something far more dangerous. This was the cold, quiet resolve of a man who had made a decision and would let nothing on earth stand in his way. You need to think about protecting him, Dante continued, his eyes moving to Danny. Right now, at this very second, there may already be people who know I'm here. People who would want to hurt me, by using you, by using him. That's your fault. Isabella snapped, rising sharply, her fear transforming into anger. It's your life that attracted those people. That's exactly why I ran, and now you found us. Dante stepped closer, filling the space between them. And anyone following me right now already knows about you. About him. The words hit Isabella like a physical blow. He was right. 6 years of careful, meticulous precaution, destroyed in a single accidental encounter. Her mind scrambled frantically for a way out, a solution, anything. And then the bakery door exploded open. 3 men in black jackets rushed in, their hands reaching beneath their coats. Isabella didn't need an explanation. The same instinct that had told her to run 6 years ago was screaming one word now. Danger. Dante reacted in a fraction of a second. He spun, drawing a weapon from behind his waist so fast that Isabella barely registered the movement. The first shot was deafening in the small space. The sound ricocheted off the walls. The cashier screamed. Customers threw themselves to the floor. Get down. Now, Dante shouted at Isabella. But she was already moving. She threw herself over Danny, her body covering his completely, as more shots tore through the air. The glass display cases exploded into thousands of glittering fragments. The smell of gunpowder and fear filled her lungs. She heard voices in Italian. Curses. Orders. The sound of bodies slamming against furniture. Another shot. Then silence, broken only by the cashier's sobbing and the rapid, shallow sound of her own breathing. Isabella, get up. We have to go. Right now. Dante's hand was on her shoulder, lifting her. Isabella looked at him. She saw a dark red stain spreading through the white shirt beneath his jacket, but his face was calm, controlled. You're hurt, she said automatically. It's nothing. Let's move. I'm not going with you. Isabella stepped back, still holding Danny close. The little boy had stopped crying, but he was in shock, his eyes wide and glassy, his small face completely blank. Dante looked at her, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Isabella saw something that might have been desperation in his eyes. You heard those shots, he said quietly. They know. Right now, more people are probably on their way. I can protect you, or I can watch you and my son die. A son I didn't even know existed for 5 years of his life. He let the words settle. Your choice. It wasn't a choice. And they both knew it. Isabella looked around the bakery. 3 men lay motionless on the floor. One of Dante's bodyguards, whom she was only noticing now, stood near the door, speaking rapidly into a phone. Another was checking the pulse of one of the attackers. Capo, the second guard said in Italian. We have maybe 3 minutes before the police arrive. Dante gave a single nod. Then he looked back at Isabella. Last time I asked, do you come with me willingly, or do I have to carry you? Isabella looked at Danny, at his pale little face, at the way he trembled against her side. She thought of the small apartment she'd built for them over 6 years, the life she'd scraped together from nothing. All of it was over now. Dante was right. Whoever those people were, they had seen her. They had seen Danny. There was nowhere left to hide. Fine, she whispered, feeling the last remnants of her freedom dissolve like snow in the sun. I'll come. Dante didn't waste a second. He took her hand and led them quickly toward the exit, his men forming a living wall around them. Outside, 2 black SUVs waited with tinted windows, engines already running. The sky above Krakow was gray and heavy with the weight of an approaching storm. As Dante helped her into the back seat, Isabella took one last look at the small bakery, at the ordinary life she was leaving behind. Through the window, she could already see the flicker of blue police lights approaching in the distance. Dante climbed in beside her. His presence was dominant even inside the large vehicle. Danny sat curled in Isabella's lap, his little face buried against her neck. The cars pulled smoothly into traffic with a practiced ease. Where are you taking us? Isabella asked, forcing herself to speak calmly, for Danny's sake. My house. I have a rented villa on the outskirts. Dante pressed a handkerchief against the wound in his side and winced. It's safe. Protected. So what? We're your prisoners now. Dante looked at her, and in his eyes were so many layered emotions that Isabella had to look away. You're my family, he said. That's something entirely different. Isabella laughed bitterly. Family doesn't hold people by force. Family doesn't hide the existence of a child from his father, Dante replied, his voice threaded through with barely contained anger. You ran, Isabella. You decided you'd rather fight alone than trust me to protect what was mine. I was terrified. She turned to face him sharply, momentarily forgetting the child in her arms. I was terrified of who you are, of what you do. I saw things, Dante. Violence. Death. People disappearing in the middle of the night. I couldn't let my son grow up in that world. So instead you chose what, poverty? Watching my son walk around in second-hand clothes? Eating the cheapest food you could find? He gestured toward Danny's worn jacket. You think that's what I would have wanted for him? I wanted safety for him. And look how that turned out. His voice was flat. You nearly died today in a bakery. The words hung between them like the blade of a knife. Isabella felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. He was right. Every sacrifice, every year of running, all of it destroyed in a single instant. Who were they? She asked finally, as the car left the city center and moved toward quieter residential streets. The Russo family, Dante answered briefly. An old debt. They thought I was alone. An easy target. And how many of them will come for revenge now? Dante looked at her for a long moment before answering. That's no longer your concern. From now on, I handle the security of our family. The car slowed and stopped before a set of tall iron gates that slowly swung open, revealing a long driveway leading to an impressive 3-story villa. Security guards in dark suits patrolled the grounds, some with dogs. Surveillance cameras were visible at every corner of the building. It's a prison, Isabella whispered, staring at all of it. It's a fortress, Dante corrected her as the car stopped in front of the main entrance. There's a difference. When they stepped out, Danny finally lifted his head from his mother's neck. He looked up at the enormous house with a child's mixture of fear and wonder. Mama, he asked softly in Polish, does a king live here? Isabella had no idea how to answer. Before she could find the words, Dante crouched down in front of the boy, lowering himself to his level. It was the first time he had looked at his son up close, really looked, and Isabella could see how something in him broke and softened at the exact same moment. Ciao, Piccolo, he said gently. It was the first time she had ever heard that voice be truly, completely gentle. What's your name? Danny glanced up at his mother, asking permission with his eyes. Isabella nodded, even though her heart ached doing it. Daniel, the boy said quietly. But everyone calls me Danny. Daniel. Dante repeated the name, and the shadow of a smile crossed his face. Do you know what that name means? Danny shook his head. God is my judge. Dante reached out and touched the boy's hair softly, and the gesture was filled with such quiet longing that Isabella had to look away. It's a strong name for a strong boy. Who are you? Danny asked, his childhood curiosity finally breaking through the fear. Isabella watched Dante hesitate. She watched him wrestle with himself, searching for the right words. Finally, he said, I'm someone who loves you very much, even though I only just met you. And I promise you, nothing bad will ever happen to you. It wasn't an answer to Danny's question, but for a 5-year-old boy, it was enough for now. Danny nodded gravely, as if they'd just sealed an important agreement. Dante stood and looked at Isabella. I'll show you your rooms. You're both exhausted. Inside, the villa was even more impressive. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings with painted frescoes, antique furniture that probably cost more than Isabella had earned in her entire life. But despite all the luxury, she felt the coldness of the place. It was beautiful, but it was not a home. Dante led them to the second floor, to a suite of connected rooms. This will be your room, Danny. He opened the first door, revealing a children's room that looked as though it had stepped out of an interior design magazine. There was a bed shaped like a racing car, shelves overflowing with toys and books, even a small climbing wall built into the corner. Danny's eyes went wide. All of this is for me. All of it, Dante confirmed, and in his voice was something that sounded like a vow. Everything you need. Everything you want. And your room, Isabella, is here. Dante opened the adjoining door, revealing a spacious bedroom with a king-size bed, a private bathroom, and a balcony overlooking the gardens. It was elegant, luxurious, and entirely foreign. Where do you sleep? She asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. Dante pointed to a third door on the far side of Danny's room. There. We'll share in caring for him. We've both lost enough already. Isabella felt a wave of panic rise in her chest. This is too fast. He doesn't even know you. Whose fault is that? Dante's voice turned sharp. I have 5 years to recover. I'm starting today. Over the following hour, Isabella tried to adjust to this new reality. A middle-aged woman named Maria, the housekeeper, brought them a warm meal. Danny, after some initial hesitation, began eating with real appetite. It was the first time in a month that Isabella had seen him eat something other than pasta and cheap cheese. Dante ate with them, asking Danny careful questions about his favorite things, school, friends, games. The boy answered shyly at first, but gradually he began to warm. Isabella watched Dante change with each response, watched him slowly become less the dangerous crime boss, and more the longing father who desperately wanted to know every detail of his son's life. After dinner, Maria took Danny for a bath. When Isabella and Dante were finally alone together, the tension between them returned with doubled force. We need to talk, Dante said, pouring himself a glass of whiskey from the bar in the corner. About what? About how you destroyed our lives. Isabella crossed her arms, trying to appear stronger than she felt. Dante turned to face her, his eyes burning. Your life? You were living in squalor, working 3 shifts to pay for the most basic things. You call that a life? It was our life. We were free. You were exposed. Dante set his glass down hard enough to make Isabella flinch. Every day? Every night. Exposed. No bodyguards, no security. If the Russos, or any one of my other enemies, had found you months ago, do you think your freedom would have saved you? Isabella felt the anger drain out of her, replaced by something cold and creeping. What do you mean, months ago? Dante paused, then sighed. I found you 3 months ago, Isabella. My men have been watching you ever since. The world tilted beneath her feet. What? I knew where you lived. I knew your routes to work. I knew Danny's school. He stepped closer to her, his expression unreadable. And I owned the building you lived in. I bought it 2 months ago. Isabella backed up, feeling everything she believed in crumbling around her. You were watching us. I was protecting you, Dante corrected. I wasn't ready to reveal myself. I didn't know how to approach you after everything that had happened between us. But I hired security guards to patrol your area. I made sure no one dangerous got close. You had no right. I had every right. His voice was firm. It's my son you took away. My son you kept from me. I abandoned you. Dante laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. You ran, Isabella. You decided you'd rather struggle alone than trust me to protect my own family. Your family is a group of killers and thieves. Isabella fired back, her voice breaking. I didn't want my son to be part of that. And instead you raised him in poverty and fear. Congratulations. The words hurt because they were true. Isabella covered her face with her hands, feeling the last of her strength leave her body. What are you going to do with us now? Silence stretched between them until finally, Isabella looked up. Dante was standing by the window, staring out at the illuminated gardens, his profile as sharp as a sculpture. I'm going to keep you here, he said at last. Where I can protect you. Where I can learn to be a father to my son. For how long? Dante turned to face her, and in his eyes was something final, something that left no room for argument. As long as it takes. Perhaps forever. You can't keep us here forever. That's kidnapping. Call it whatever you want. Dante shrugged. But the Russo family now knows about you, and about Danny. I have 5 other enemies who would happily use you both against me. Until I eliminate every single threat, you stay here. Under my protection. Under my roof. Isabella felt like a caged animal. And if I refuse? Dante moved toward her. He stopped so close she could feel the heat radiating off his body. This isn't about what you want, Isabella. It's about survival. Our son's survival. And whatever you think of me, I know you want that too. He was right. And that was the worst part. In her heart, in the deepest part of her soul, Isabella knew that this world she had spent 6 years trying to escape had just pulled her back in. And this time, there was no way out. I need time, she whispered finally. Danny needs time. All of this is traumatic for him. You have time. Dante stepped back, giving her space. But know this, Isabella. For the last 3 months, I've been watching you both. I saw how you kept Danny close because you couldn't afford a proper winter coat. I saw you skip dinner so he could eat twice a day. I saw your strength, your love, your sacrifice. Isabella looked at him, surprised. There was something warm in his voice, something she hadn't heard in years. I know you hate me for what I am, Dante continued. But despite everything, despite this world I chose, I never stopped loving you. I never stopped looking for you. And now that I know about Danny, there is no force on this earth that will separate me from you. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning and unspoken promises. Isabella didn't know what to say. Part of her hated him for all of this. Another part, that small, silent part she had tried to bury for 6 years, felt something else. Something dangerous. I'm going to check on Danny, she said finally, needing to escape the intensity of this moment. Dante nodded. Isabella left without another word and found her way to the bathroom, where Maria was helping Danny step out of the tub. He was clean and dressed in silk pajamas that probably cost more than all his previous clothes combined. Mama, did you see all the toys in my room? Danny was glowing, the trauma of the bakery already pushed aside by the excitement of this new place. I saw them, sweetheart. Isabella knelt and kissed his forehead. Ready to sleep? Can we stay here? Please? This house is so big and wonderful. Isabella felt a sharp ache in her chest. So fast. He was won over so fast by the promise of comfort and warmth. But could she blame him? He had never had any of this. To him, it must have seemed like a fairy tale. We'll see, sweetheart. First we rest. That night, Isabella sat in Danny's room and watched her son fall asleep in the largest, softest bed he had ever known. Through the window, Krakow glittered in the distance. The city that had been her refuge, her escape, her home for 6 years. Now it felt as distant as another life. Another person. A soft knock. She turned, expecting Maria. It was Dante. He stood in the doorway, his large silhouette framed by the light from the hallway. Is he asleep? He asked quietly. Isabella nodded and rose carefully, slipping out to the corridor and pulling the door behind her. A doctor is coming, Dante said, pressing a hand to his side where the shirt had gone from white to deep red. He'll examine all of you. Make sure everyone is all right. We're fine, Isabella replied automatically, though her eyes stayed fixed on the wound. You're the one who needs help. It's nothing. I've had worse. That doesn't mean you should ignore it. For a moment they stood in silence, and the quiet between them was thick with everything unsaid. Finally, Dante exhaled. Isabella, I know this isn't easy. I know you hate me right now. But I swear to you, everything I do for you. For our family. We're not a family, Isabella whispered. But the words felt hollow even to her own ears. We are, Dante answered, with absolute certainty. We always were. And now that I've found you again, I will do whatever it takes to keep you, whatever the cost, whoever I have to destroy. And Isabella knew he meant every word of it. Dante Ferretti was a man who got what he wanted, no matter what methods he used. And what he wanted now was them, his lost family, his unknown son, his runaway wife. That night, lying in the luxurious bedroom that was equal parts refuge and prison, Isabella found herself asking how everything had gone so wrong, so fast. 6 hours ago she was a free woman, struggling, but free. Now she was in a gilded cage, protected by the very man she had spent years running from. And the worst part? Part of her, that dark, buried part she was afraid to examine, felt relief. Relief that someone else was finally carrying the weight. Relief that Danny would have a father, even if that father was who he was. Relief that for the first time in 6 years, she wouldn't have to fight for survival alone. That relief terrified her more than any threat ever could. Because if she accepted this, if she allowed herself to feel safe in Dante's world, she would lose something essential. She would lose herself. But looking at her own tired face reflected in the mirror above the dresser, Isabella wasn't sure anymore if there was anything left to lose. Isabella woke with a scream trapped in her throat. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Morning light filtered through tall windows, illuminating a room that was too large, too lavish, too foreign. Then everything came back all at once, like a wave of ice water. The bakery, the gunshots, Dante. They were his prisoners now. She threw back the covers, her heart hammering, and ran to the door. She had to check on Danny. She rushed out into the hallway, her bare feet silent on the marble floor, and pushed open her son's bedroom door. The bed was empty. Panic detonated in her chest. "Danny," she called, her voice breaking with fear. "Danny." She was already running down the corridor, then down the wide marble staircase. Where was he? Did something happen? Did someone take him? Her mind spiraled through the worst possible outcomes. Then she heard it. Laughter. Danny's laugh, bright, clear, and joyful, drifting in from somewhere at the back of the house. Isabella followed the sound through the large kitchen, with its French doors opening onto the terrace, and what she saw through the glass made her stop completely. Danny was outside in the garden, running barefoot across the lawn in a new shirt and jeans she had never seen before. He was laughing, arms spread wide, as a large black and white German shepherd bounded after him. And a few meters away, watching, stood Dante. He was smiling. Not the cold, calculated smile he showed in business. Not the sardonic smirk he used as a weapon. A real smile. Warm. Open. The kind that lit his entire face and made him look 10 years younger. He looked like the man she had known a decade ago, before she fully understood who he really was. "Attento, Piccolo," Dante called out as Danny nearly tripped over his own feet. "Lentamente, Zeus will catch you." Danny only laughed harder, throwing open his arms and letting the dog tackle him into the grass. The dog barked with pure delight, and Danny went down in a heap of childhood joy and canine enthusiasm. Isabella felt something strange move through her chest, something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. For 6 years, it had been just her and Danny against the world. No one else. No other adult to watch her son run and laugh. No one to share in the weight and the wonder of raising him. And now, watching Dante observe Danny with such pure, unguarded love, such raw longing, Isabella began to question every story she had told herself over the past 6 years. Had she been right to take this from him? Had she really had the right to make that choice alone? "Senora Isabella, coffee?" Isabella startled. Maria stood beside the espresso machine, smiling gently. The woman was around 50, with silver threads in her dark hair and warm brown eyes. "Yes, thank you," Isabella replied softly, still dazed by what she'd seen outside. Maria handed her a steaming cup. "Your son is wonderful. So full of life. Where did that clothing come from?" Isabella asked, trying to anchor herself to something concrete, something she could control. "Mr. Ferretti had them brought early this morning. A full wardrobe for the boy, and for you as well." Maria nodded upward. "Everything in your wardrobe. All your size, of course." Dante knew her size. He'd been watching her for 3 months. He probably knew more about her current life than she was willing to admit. "I don't want his clothes," Isabella said. But even she could hear how weak it sounded. "Perhaps not," Maria replied gently, without judgment. "But your son does. I saw the shirt he was wearing when you arrived yesterday. It had been mended 3 times. A flush of shame rose through Isabella's face. "I did what I could. I know." Maria placed a warm hand on Isabella's shoulder. "Every mother does. You did the impossible for 6 years. But you don't have to do it alone anymore." Before Isabella could respond, the French doors burst open and Danny came charging in. Cheeks flushed red, eyes blazing with happiness. Mama, did you see Zeus? He's the biggest dog I've ever seen in my whole life." He launched himself into her arms, and Isabella dropped to her knees, holding him tight, breathing in the smell of grass and childhood in his hair. I saw him, sweetheart. Did you have fun? It was incredible. And Mr. Dante said Zeus can be my dog. Can I keep him, Mama? Please. Isabella looked up and found Dante standing in the doorway, watching her steadily. There was a challenge in his gaze, but something else too. A quiet plea for understanding. We'll see. Isabella said automatically, the universal answer of mothers who need time to think. But Mama. Danny. Dante interrupted, gently but firmly. Why don't you go wash your hands? Maria made breakfast. I believe there are pancakes. Danny's eyes went enormous. With maple syrup? With whatever you want, Dante said, and his voice carried a meaning that went far beyond breakfast. Danny bolted for the bathroom. Zeus followed, tail wagging furiously. Maria quietly disappeared into the pantry. Isabella and Dante were alone. You can't just buy his love, Isabella said, standing up slowly. I'm not trying to buy his love, Dante replied, equally quiet. I'm trying to give him the things he deserves. The things he should have had from the day he was born. He had everything he needed. He needed a father. The words were simple, but they landed like a blow. He needed a family. He needed security. And yes, Isabella, he needed more than one meal a day and hand-me-down clothes. Isabella clenched her jaw. Not everyone can be a crime lord with unlimited resources. No. Dante moved one step closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. But everyone can ask for help when they need it. You could have come back, Isabella. At any point over the last 6 years, you could have come back. And what? Let you turn our son into another gangster. Teach him that violence and death are just the way things are. Is that what you think my life is? Dante laughed, a short, bitter sound. You think that's what I want for Danny? You think I want him to follow my path? Don't you? Isabella threw down the challenge. Isn't that what men like you do? Pass the empire from father to son. The silence that followed was dense and heavy. Dante stared at her for a long moment, something moving behind his jaw. Then finally, he said, when I was 8 years old, my father took me to a warehouse. He made me watch as one of his men tortured a man who had betrayed him. He said I needed to learn how to exercise power through fear. A pause. I still remember that man's screams. I remember the smell of blood. I remember vomiting afterward, and my father calling me weak. Isabella felt her anger drain slowly away, replaced by something far more complex. For the rest of my childhood, Dante continued, his voice stripped of emotion, I was trained like a weapon. No friends, only allies. No love, only loyalty through fear. When I was 16, I carried out my first hit. A long silence. The boy who died was 20 years old. I still see his face sometimes. Dante, Isabella started. He raised a hand. I don't want your sympathy. I want you to understand. Everything I have ever wanted, everything I have always wanted, was to give my son something different. A choice. Normalcy. The chance to be something other than what I am. How can you give him that when you are who you are? I don't know. Dante admitted it quietly. And for the first time, Isabella saw real vulnerability in his eyes. But I want to try. I have legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, wine exports. Danny can be raised away from the darker side. He can go to the best schools. Have real friends. Choose his own path. And your enemies. That's exactly why we're here, Dante cut in. That's what the security is for. In the coming weeks, I'll eliminate every direct threat. The Russo family first, then the others. When it's done, no one will dare touch my family. He paused. Yes, by doing what has to be done. I won't apologize for what I am. My world is brutal. It always has been. But I can at least make sure that Danny never has to enter it, if he doesn't choose to. Danny came running back before Isabella could respond, his hands dripping from the sink. Maria appeared as if by magic, carrying plates stacked with golden pancakes, fresh fruit, and ham. More food than Isabella normally bought for an entire week. They ate together at the big kitchen table. Danny chattered without pause about Zeus, the garden, and the toys in his room. Dante listened to every word, asked follow-up questions, laughed in all the right places, and watched his son with such hunger, such desperate need to absorb every detail, that Isabella felt something tighten in her chest. After breakfast, Dante excused himself for a phone call. Isabella used the moment to take Danny back to his room. Sweetheart, we need to talk about Mr. Dante. She began carefully, sitting on the edge of Danny's bed. I like him, Danny said immediately. He's kind. And he has a dog. I know you like him. But Danny, do you remember what happened yesterday in the bakery? The men with guns. The boy's face clouded over. The bad men. Yes. And that happened because Mr. Dante, he has enemies. People who want to hurt him. But he saved us, Danny said with a child's simple clarity. He didn't let them hurt us. Isabella exhaled slowly. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that the man who saved them was also the reason the danger came in the first place? That's true. He did save us. She took a breath. Danny, there's something you need to know. Mr. Dante, he's your father. She braced herself for shock, for confusion, for tears. Instead, Danny looked at her with those wide brown eyes and said simply, I know. Isabella went still. What? He has the same eyes as me. Danny touched his own face. And he talks a little like me when I talk to Grandma on the phone, remember? Isabella hadn't spoken to Dante's mother in 6 years. But Danny was right. The accent, the way certain words formed, something unmistakably Italian that Danny had absorbed from her, even though she tried to minimize it. Are you angry? Isabella asked quietly. Danny thought about it, his young face very serious. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I was afraid. I was afraid of his world, the things he does. I wanted to protect you. But now he's protecting both of us. Danny said it so logically. So maybe it's okay, right? That I have a dad now. Out of the mouth of a child, it sounded so simple. Isabella felt tears burn at the corners of her eyes. Maybe, she whispered, pulling him close. Maybe it is. The rest of the day passed in a strange haze of near normalcy. Maria brought Isabella to her bedroom and showed her the wardrobe Dante had filled, everything perfectly suited to her taste and size. Elegant but understated. Expensive but not showy. Exactly what Isabella would have chosen for herself if she'd ever had the money. How did he know? She asked, flipping through the hangers. Maria smiled gently. Mr. Ferretti is very observant. He always has been. When he loves someone, he notices everything. Love. The word Isabella had been trying not to think about. Had Dante ever really loved her? What they'd had 10 years ago, was it love? Or obsession? And now, after everything that had passed between them, after all these years, was there still something there? She was afraid of the answer. By afternoon, Isabella had worked up the nerve to explore the villa. It was enormous. 3 floors, 12 bedrooms, a library, a gym, and even an underground pool. Security guards moved throughout every floor, discreet but ever-present, reminding her constantly that this was a fortress, not a home. She found Dante in his office on the 3rd floor, surrounded by computer screens and phones. He sat behind a large mahogany desk, speaking coldly in Italian to someone on the other end of a call. His voice was commanding, authoritative, and in that moment, Isabella was reminded sharply of who he truly was. Not the gentle father playing with his son in the garden. The ruthless head of a criminal organization. She wanted to leave, but Dante looked up and waved her in. He ended the call quickly and set the phone down. I'm sorry, he said. Business requires attention. What kind of business? The kind that makes sure yesterday doesn't happen again. He leaned back in his chair and studied her. The Russo family now has a significant problem. You're going to kill them all, aren't you? Without hesitation. Without remorse. Isabella moved to the window and looked down at the gardens, where Danny was still playing with Zeus under the watchful eyes of 2 guards disguised as gardeners. Does this ever end? She asked. The violence? Not in my world. Dante joined her at the window, standing close enough that she felt the warmth of his body. But I can make sure it never reaches you. That's all I can offer. It's not enough. Maybe not. But it's all I have. Isabella turned and studied his face. What do you actually want from me, Dante? Truly. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Something struggled in his expression. Finally he said, I want a chance. A chance to be a father. A chance to rebuild what we lost. A chance to show you I can give you the life you deserve. I don't want your life. No. He raised his hand slowly and touched her cheek. Just barely. And the gesture was so delicate that Isabella went completely still. Don't you remember how it was? Before everything fell apart. When we were happy. She had been happy. Briefly. Brilliantly. Before she fully understood the cost of his world, she had been happy. Dante had been magnetic, passionate, attentive. He'd made her feel like the most important person on earth. And then she had seen too much, learned too much, and fear had replaced everything else. That was a long time ago, she whispered. But she didn't pull away from his touch. It doesn't have to be. Dante leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. We could try again. Be a real family. You can't just erase 6 years, Dante. You can't undo what happened. I'm not trying to erase anything. I'm trying to build something new from what's left. Isabella felt herself torn between the instinct to run and the dangerous pull to stay. Part of her hated him, hated what he was, what he represented. But another part, buried deep and long denied, remembered what it felt like to be loved by Dante Ferretti, to be the center of his universe, to be shielded by the most powerful man she knew. I need time, she said finally, stepping back. Danny needs time. This is all too fast, too intense. You have time, Dante agreed. But something in his tone told her his patience had limits. But understand this, Isabella. I will never stop. I found you. I found my son. There is no force on this earth that will take you from me again. A promise. And a threat, wrapped in the same words. Isabella nodded, not trusting her voice, and walked out of the office. In the hallway, she pressed her back against the wall and waited for her heartbeat to slow. What was she doing? Why did part of her want to believe him? Why did part of her want to say yes to this life, to his offer of family, of security, of something that looked terrifyingly like home? Because you've been alone, a small voice whispered inside her. For 6 years you've been alone, carrying everything by yourself. And now someone is offering help, support, company, even if that someone is Dante Ferretti. That evening they had dinner together, this time in the formal dining room. It was an almost surreal scene in its ordinary beauty. A family sharing a meal. Dante asking Danny about his favorite subjects at school. Isabella answering questions about the boys' daily routines. But beneath the surface, tension hummed like a live wire. And every time Isabella's eyes met Dante's across the table, she felt it. That electric, dangerous current of anger, fear, and something she refused to name. After dinner, once Danny was in bed, Isabella stood on the balcony of her bedroom and looked out at the night sky over Krakow. The city glittered in the distance, its countless lights reminding her that a world existed beyond these walls. Are you thinking about escaping? She wasn't surprised to hear him. She'd known Dante would come. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his silhouette lit from behind by the glow of the room. I'm always thinking about escaping, she admitted. It's what I do. I run. What are you running from this time? Dante stepped onto the balcony and joined her at the railing. From you, she said honestly. From the truth. From myself. From the man who says he loves me, but keeps me here by force. From the feelings I don't want to have. What feelings? Dante turned toward her, his hand lifting to her chin, tilting her face up toward his. Don't, she whispered. I'm not doing anything. I'm just asking. His eyes searched hers. Do you know what I feel for you? You always knew. That was the problem. He leaned closer, his face only centimeters from hers. Tell me. No. But her body told a different story, leaning toward him in spite of everything her mind was saying. Isabella. Her name was a prayer and a curse on his lips. Tell me. I loved you. The words came out of her like a confession she'd been holding for years. I loved you so much it terrified me. Every day, I was afraid that was the day your world would take you from me. Every night, I waited for the phone call that said you were gone. I couldn't live like that. I couldn't raise our son in that kind of fear. And now, Dante reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Now I'm still afraid, she said. But I'm also tired. Tired of being alone. Tired of fighting. Tired of pretending I don't miss what we had. That was all Dante needed. He closed the distance between them, and his lips found hers in a kiss that was both desperate and tender. Isabella knew she should have pulled away. She knew she should have taken a step back. Instead, she found herself answering him, her hands in his hair, her body pressing close. For one long moment, the whole world fell away. There was no past, no future, only this. Years of buried emotions surfacing at once like fire breaking through ice. When they finally parted, both of them breathing hard, Dante pressed his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Not as a prisoner. As my wife. As the mother of my son. As part of this family. I can't, Isabella said. But the words were barely there. You can. You're just afraid to believe that you're allowed to be happy here. With me. How can I be happy knowing what you do? Who you are? That doesn't define all of me. Dante pulled back slightly, his hands still on her shoulders. I'm also a man who loves you. Who loves our son. Who wants a normal life just as badly as you do. But you can't have a normal life. Not in your world. Then help me build one here. In this house. With our son. Let this be our sanctuary, a place the outside world can't reach. It was tempting. Dangerously tempting. Isabella could see the future he was painting. Family, safety, love. But she could also see the shadows lurking at the edges of that image. The violence that would keep coming. The enemies that would never stop. I need to think, she said finally. Dante nodded, though the disappointment in his face was clear. Think as long as you need. But remember this, Isabella. From the moment I met you 10 years ago, I knew you were mine. Nothing has changed. Nothing ever will. He left her on the balcony, alone with her thoughts, alone with the stars overhead. Isabella stood there for a long time, looking for answers in the sky. The stars kept their silence. The only certainty she had was that her life had changed beyond recovery. There was no going back to the woman she was yesterday. No escaping the man who had found her. The question was, would she accept this new reality or fight it until the end? And in accepting it, would she lose herself forever? She didn't have the answers yet, but she knew one thing. Dante Ferretti was like gravity. The harder she tried to resist, the stronger he pulled her back. And deep in her soul, in the place she was most afraid to look, part of her had already stopped wanting to resist. That realization frightened her more than anything else. 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm of routine and uncertainty. Every morning, Maria brought fresh breakfast. Every afternoon, Danny played in the garden with Zeus, his laughter floating through the open windows. Every evening, the three of them sat down together like a normal family for dinner. And every night, Isabella lay in the dark, listening to Dante's quiet footsteps in the room beside hers, aware of his closeness, his presence, the way he filled every space in her life. But today felt different. Isabella woke with a restlessness she couldn't name. The air felt heavy, charged with something she didn't understand. She stepped onto the balcony and saw it immediately. 3 new black SUVs parked at the front of the villa. Men in suits moved in and out, all of them carrying that same aura of barely contained violence beneath a facade of professionalism. Something was happening. Something big. Isabella dressed quickly and went downstairs. She found Maria in the kitchen, her usually calm face creased with worry. What's going on? Isabella asked. Maria hesitated, clearly measuring how much to say. Mr. Ferretti has a meeting. With important people. What kind of meeting? The kind that ends wars. The voice came from the doorway. Isabella turned to see Marco, one of Dante's senior guards, a man of about 40 with a scar running the length of his left cheek. He had been with them for the past 2 weeks. The capo asks that you remain in your room today. For safety. Where is Danny? Isabella asked immediately, panic surging. Safe in the playroom. 2 guards on the door. No one is permitted anywhere near that wing of the building. Isabella wanted to run there immediately, but Marco stepped calmly into her path. Please, Signora. Mr. Ferretti was very clear. No one moves today. I am the mother of his son. I am not his property. You are both, Marco replied without malice, simply stating a fact. And that is exactly why we have to protect you. Before Isabella could respond, she heard voices from the main hallway. Dante's deep, commanding tone rose above the others. But there was something else, another voice. A voice that froze the blood in her veins. You can't just kill half my men and expect this to be over, Ferretti. Isabella knew that voice. Lucas Russo, one of the most dangerous criminals in Europe. The man whose people had attacked them in the bakery. What was he doing here? Without waiting for permission, she pushed past Marco and followed the voices. She walked into the grand sitting room and stopped cold. Dante stood beside the fireplace, flanked by 5 of his men, all armed. Opposite him stood Lucas Russo, short, heavy-set, around 50, with coarsely cut gray hair and dead eyes. Russo was surrounded by 4 men of his own. He was shorter than she'd imagined. His appearance was deceptive. This man was responsible for dozens of deaths. Isabella, out, Dante said quietly, but his eyes burned with fury at her presence. Ah, so this is her. Russo turned, his gaze moving slowly over Isabella from head to foot in a way that made her skin crawl. The woman worth killing half my men over. I don't repeat myself. Dante stepped forward, and the threat in his voice was palpable. Relax, Ferretti. Russo raised both hands in a gesture of false surrender. I came to negotiate, not to fight. At least, not today. Isabella felt Marco's hand close gently but firmly on her shoulder, steering her back toward the hallway. But before she was out of the room, she caught Dante's eyes across the space. In them, fury, and beneath it, something she had never expected to see there. Fear. Dante Ferretti, the man who feared nothing, was afraid. For her. For Danny. That realization shook her harder than anything else could. Marco brought her back to her room. 2 additional guards took up positions at the doors. Please, Signora. Stay here. It's for your own good. Isabella wanted to argue, but she knew it was pointless. Instead, she went straight to the playroom, where she found Danny building something elaborate out of Lego, completely unaware of the tension pulsing through the house. Mama. His face lit up when he saw her. Look, I built a castle. Isabella dropped to her knees beside him and pulled him into a tight hug, breathing in the smell of his shampoo. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Where's Papa? And Isabella realized, at some point in the past 2 weeks, Danny had simply started calling Dante Papa. Naturally, as if the word had always been waiting inside him to be used. He's in a meeting. Something important. Will he come to play with me after? I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so. She sat with Danny for the next 2 hours. They built castles from blocks and pretended everything was fine. But her ears stayed tuned to every sound from below, every raised voice, every echo of footsteps, every murmur that drifted up through the floors. Finally she heard it. Cars pulling away. Then silence. A silence almost louder than the noise before it. Isabella waited, her heart beating, until the door finally opened and Dante walked in. He looked exhausted. His shirt, normally perfectly pressed, was wrinkled. His hair was disheveled, as if he'd run his fingers through it 100 times. But he was whole. He was safe. Papa. Danny shot up and launched himself at Dante's arms. Dante caught him and held him tight, eyes closed, as though the child in his arms was the only thing keeping him together. Ciao, Piccolo. Dante whispered into Danny's hair. You were a good boy today? Yes. We built a castle. Do you want to see? Of course I do. Dante let Danny drag him toward the Lego construction. But his eyes found Isabella across the room, and what was in them was dark, heavy. Whatever had happened with Russo had not gone well. After half an hour of playing with Danny, Dante stood. Piccolo, I need to talk to your mama. Can you stay here with Marco? Maybe he'll teach you chess. Danny nodded enthusiastically, already forgetting them as Marco produced a chessboard. Dante took Isabella's hand and led her down the hall to his office. The moment the door closed, she turned to face him. What happened? What did Russo want? Dante crossed to the bar, poured a large measure of whiskey, drank it in a single motion, and poured another. He wants 2 million euros. Compensation for his dead men. And he wants me to stop my expansion into his eastern territories. What did you tell him? I told him he'll receive 1 million. And that my expansion east is not negotiable. Dante turned to look at her, but he wanted something else. Isabella felt cold trail down her spine. What? He wanted to see you. He wanted to know who you are. Why you were worth starting a war over. Dante's jaw tightened. He wanted me to know that he knows about you, about Danny. That he can reach either of you whenever he chooses. That was a threat. It was a warning. Dante set his glass down so hard Isabella feared it would shatter. He was showing his power. Telling me that even here, in my own fortress, you're not truly safe. Then what do we do? Isabella felt the old panic crawling through her veins. Now we end this. Dante moved toward her, his hands gripping her shoulders. Russo made a mistake today. He showed me his fear. Men who threaten families are men who know they're losing. He didn't look like a man winning. He looked like a man performing. I saw it in his eyes. He's terrified. His organization is bleeding. His allies are abandoning him. I've hit him where it hurts most, in his finances and his reputation. And now he'll try to get revenge. He'll try. Dante's hand moved upward to cup her face. But I will not let him anywhere near you. I promise you that, Isabella. This will be over soon. By killing more people. By doing what you always do. Dante didn't flinch. This is my world. These are the rules I live by. And if it means erasing the entire Russo family from existence to protect mine, that is exactly what I will do. Isabella wanted to pull away, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that there had to be another way. But the words stuck in her throat, because somewhere deep inside she knew he was right. In this brutal, merciless world, there was only one rule: survive. And Dante was doing everything in his power to make sure his family did. I'm scared, she admitted finally. I know. Dante pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. But I'm here. I will never let anything happen to you. Isabella let herself be held. She let herself borrow his strength. It was madness. All of it was madness. But in that moment, held by the man who was simultaneously her prison and her protection, she felt safer than she had in 6 years. That was the most dangerous feeling of all. That night the atmosphere in the villa was tense. Guards were everywhere, their numbers doubled. Dante took calls through the entire dinner, his expression growing harder with each conversation. Danny felt it. He was unusually quiet, his normally unstoppable chatter replaced by a nervous silence. After dinner, as Isabella put Danny to bed, the boy caught her hand. Mama, is everything going to be okay? He asked in his small voice. Isabella made herself smile. Of course, sweetheart. Why do you ask? Because everyone is sad today, and there are more men with guns. Too clever. Always too clever for his age. Sometimes adults have difficult things to deal with, she said carefully. But I promise you, you're safe. Papa and I are making sure of that. Papa is strong, Danny said with the absolute certainty only a child can have. Nothing bad will happen when he's here. Isabella kissed his forehead without trusting herself to answer. Danny was asleep within minutes. She sat beside his bed for a long time, watching the rise and fall of his chest, his face peaceful in sleep. When she finally stepped into the hallway, Dante was waiting. He said nothing. He simply took her hand and led her up, all the way to the rooftop of the villa. A terrace on the top floor that she hadn't known existed. All of Krakow spread out before them like a sea of lights. It was breathtaking. Still, a perfect contrast to the chaos inside her chest. Why did you bring me here? She asked. Because you needed to breathe. He stood at the railing and gazed out at the city. I see it in your eyes. You feel trapped. I am trapped. No. He turned toward her. You're protected. There's a difference. Not to me. Isabella joined him at the railing. The cold night wind moved through her hair. It still feels like a cage, just a prettier one. Silence stretched between them, heavy with all the things they hadn't said. Finally, Dante spoke. Did you know that I looked for you every single day? He said quietly. For those 6 years. Every informant I had. Every contact in every city. At one point I thought you might be dead. It was the only explanation I could find for why I couldn't locate you. He paused. For 3 years, I couldn't sleep properly. Every unidentified woman, every Jane Doe. I had to verify it wasn't you. My men thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. Isabella stared at him. I didn't know that. Because without you, nothing had meaning, Dante said. He looked at her, and his eyes were raw, more unguarded than she had ever seen them. The money, the power, the empire, all of it was hollow. You were the only real thing I had. You were the only person who ever saw me, not just the Ferretti name. I saw who you were, Isabella said softly. I saw too much. You saw the worst parts, Dante admitted. And you ran before you could see that there was something more. That maybe, with you, I could have been something different. Isabella felt something crack open in her chest. A wall she had been building around her heart for 6 years, just beginning to give way. Dante, you can't change who you are. I can't change my past. But I can change our future. He turned fully toward her and took both of her hands in his. Isabella, I know this isn't the life you wanted. I know I'm the last man you should love. But we're here, right now, and we have a chance that most people never get. A chance to start again. With you as head of the Mafia, she said. With us as a family. His grip on her hands tightened. That's all I want. A family. A home. A place where I can just be Dante, not Capo Ferretti. Just a father. He hesitated. Just your. She finished the sentence for him. Husband. If you'll let me be. Dante reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. When he opened it, Isabella's breath caught. Inside was a ring. Not the flashy modern piece she might have expected. It was antique. Delicate. A single emerald surrounded by small diamonds. It was beautiful. Understated. Exactly what she would have chosen for herself. It was my grandmother's, Dante said quietly. The only person in my family who ever showed me real love. She left it to me when she died. She said I should give it to the woman who made me want to be a better man. Tears slid down Isabella's cheeks. Dante, I can't. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm not even asking you to wear it. He held the box steady between them. I just want you to know. This is what I want. You, Danny, a family, forever. Isabella looked at the ring, then at Dante, then back at the ring. Part of her wanted to say yes, to throw caution to the wind and believe that love could conquer everything. But the sensible part, the part that had kept her and Danny alive for 6 years, knew better. What if Russo wins? She asked. What if there are more like him? What if one day Danny loses you to this war? Then I will have made sure you're both protected regardless. Trusts, offshore accounts, safe houses in 10 countries. Whatever happens to me, you and Danny will never want for anything. It's not about the money, Isabella said, her voice rising. It's about you. Danny needs a father. A living father. Not a bank account. And I will be here. I promise. You can't promise that. Not in your world. Dante's jaw tightened. The frustration was clear. What do you want me to say? That I'll shut everything down? Walk away and become an ordinary businessman? We both know that's impossible. Once you're in this world, you never truly leave it. Then why propose to me? Why pretend we can have a normal life? Because I can give you something close to it. Isabella, listen to me. He raised his voice slightly, then pulled it back, controlling himself. Yes, I am what I am. I cannot change that. But I can control how much of that world I let into our lives. I can make sure Danny grows up seeing a father who loves him, not the monster you believe me to be. I don't believe you're a monster. No. Dante laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound. I see it in your eyes every time my phone rings. Every time I leave the house. You wonder how many people I'm going to hurt that day. How much blood will be on my hands when I come back. Isabella couldn't deny it. It's hard to love you and hate what you do. Then do you love me? It wasn't a question. Not really. Isabella closed her eyes and felt the last of her defenses crumble. I never stopped, she whispered. Even when I hated you. Even when I was running. I never stopped. I tried. I couldn't. When she opened her eyes, Dante was right in front of her, close enough that she could count his eyelashes. See every small line around his eyes. Then stop fighting, he said. Stop running. Stay with me. Really stay. And if who you are is too much, if I can't do it, then I will learn to live with your hatred. He touched her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. But I will never let you go. I will never take my son from you. So we can fight each other for the next 10 years, or we can try to make this work. Your choice. It wasn't a choice. And yet, there was a strange liberation in that. Isabella had been fighting alone for so long. She had been strong for herself and for Danny for so long. Maybe it was all right to stop. Maybe it was all right to let someone else carry the weight for once. I need time, she said finally. I'm not ready for marriage. I'm not sure I'm ready for you. But I can try. I can try to see if there's a way that this could work. The relief that flooded Dante's face was so intense, so naked, that Isabella understood for the first time just how afraid he had been that she would say no altogether. That's all I'm asking, he said. Time. A chance. The possibility of showing you that I can be the man you need. I'm not sure that man exists. Then let me try to get as close as I possibly can. Dante leaned in, and his lips touched hers. Just barely. A whisper of a kiss. Let me try to be worthy of it. And there, on the rooftop of the villa, in the heart of Krakow, with the city stretching below them and the stars burning overhead, Isabella allowed herself to believe, for the first time in 6 years, that maybe, just maybe, this was a life she didn't need to run from. The kiss deepened. Years of longing, of suppressed love, of things left unsaid, all of it surfaced between them at once. When they finally pulled apart, Dante pressed his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he breathed. Not as a prisoner. Not out of obligation. Just as us. Isabella knew what he was asking. She knew what it meant. If she crossed this line, there was no going back. She would be his in every way that mattered. But looking into his eyes, seeing the love and desperation and need written there so plainly, she realized she had already crossed that line. She'd crossed it years ago, in another life. And she had never really come back. Yes, she whispered. Yes. That night. Isabella learned that sometimes surrender is not weakness. Sometimes it is the most powerful choice you can make. The door closed behind them, and everything that had been building between them for years, all the longing, the grief, the love that refused to die, dissolved quietly into the dark. When the pale light of morning came, Isabella lay in the warmth of Dante's arms, listening to his steady breathing, and let herself rest. Something had changed, and she didn't regret it. The next morning Isabella woke to a sound that sent ice straight through her veins. A scream, high and terrified. "Mama! Danny!" She was out of the bed before she was fully awake, stumbling toward her clothes. Dante was already moving, pulling on trousers, pulling a handgun from the nightstand drawer. "Stay here," he ordered. She ignored him. He was her son. Nothing on earth could stop her. They ran together down the hallway and burst through Danny's open door. Isabella nearly screamed. Marco lay on the floor, blood pooling from a wound on his head. And beside the window, holding Danny, who was struggling with everything his small body had, stood a man in a black mask. A blade pressed against Danny's throat. "One move and the boy dies," the man said in broken Italian. "Russo sends a message. No one is safe. Not even here." Dante froze. Gun raised. Hand absolutely steady. Face a cold, hard mask. "Let him go. Now." "Russo sends a message," the man repeated. Isabella saw the fear in Danny's eyes, the way his whole body shook, and something inside her simply broke. Without thinking, acting purely on the oldest instinct in the world, she lunged forward. "Isabella, no!" Dante shouted. Too late. She hit the attacker with her full weight, enough to throw him off balance. Danny tumbled free, rolling across the floor. Dante fired one clean shot. The attacker went down. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, and then Danny's sobs and Isabella's arms around him, and her voice in his ear saying, "You're safe, you're safe, you're safe," over and over while she checked every inch of him, kissing his face, laughing and crying at exactly the same time from the sheer, overwhelming relief of it. Dante stood over the body, his expression drained of all feeling. His hands, when he finally lowered the gun, were trembling. He looked at Isabella, at Danny, and what crossed his face looked like absolute terror. "This ends," he said quietly, but his voice was pure iron. "Russo will regret the day he was born." And Isabella, holding her crying son against her chest, knew that whatever came next would be brutal and bloody. But she didn't care anymore. They had tried to hurt her child, and for that, they would pay. The war had restarted, and this time, Isabella would not be a bystander. This time, she would fight beside Dante. Because when you're protecting your family, there is no room for hesitation, only survival. The next 48 hours moved in a storm of controlled chaos. Isabella had never seen Dante like this. Cold, precise, every decision calculated with a surgeon's accuracy and an executioner's resolve. His men came and went at all hours. Conversations in hushed Italian that Isabella only partially understood, but understood enough. The hunt had begun. Danny was terrified that first night after the attack. He would only sleep when both Isabella and Dante were in his room, one on either side of his bed. Isabella watched her son finally drift off, one small hand clutching her fingers, the other gripping the fabric of Dante's shirt. She looked at Dante across their sleeping child, and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen there before, an absolute, primitive need to protect. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered once Danny was breathing deeply. "I cannot live in constant fear." "You won't have to," Dante replied, equally quiet. "In 48 hours, Russo will be dead. His organization will be in ruins. And every person who even thinks about touching this family will know the price. How many people will die? As many as it takes. No apology. No hesitation. I'm not sorry for what I am. But I will make sure Danny never has to enter this world, if he doesn't choose to." Isabella should have been frightened by the cold calculation in his voice. Instead, she felt something strange, a quiet, settling relief. This was what Dante was. And for the first time, she accepted it completely. Not because she approved of the violence, but because she understood its place in this world. They had tried to kill her son, and if Dante had to eliminate the entire Russo family to stop another attempt, then so be it. On the second day, Isabella did something she never thought she would do. She went down to the lower level of the villa, a place she knew existed but had never visited. the training room, the shooting range, and beyond it, the room where Dante conducted his darkest business. She found him there with 3 of his most senior men, bent over a table covered in maps and photographs. When she walked in, every head turned. "Isabella, what are you doing here?" Dante moved toward her immediately. "You should be with Danny. Maria is with him. He's napping." She looked at the table, at the photographs of men, some already crossed out in red marker. "I want to help." "No." Flat. Final. Not even a question. "They tried to take my son," Isabella said, and her voice was steadier than she had ever felt inside. "Our son. I have the right to be part of this." "You don't understand what you're asking." "Then teach me." She held his gaze. "Teach me to shoot. Teach me to protect myself. And Danny, if something happens to you, teach me to survive in this world, since I can't escape it." Dante studied her for a long moment. Something worked behind his eyes. Finally, he turned to his men. "Lasciatisi soli." When they were alone, he crossed to a cabinet on the wall and opened it, removing a compact pistol. "Glock 19, he said, checking the chamber and confirming it was unloaded. "Light, reliable, easy to handle." Over the next 2 hours, Dante taught Isabella the basics. How to hold the weapon, how to aim, how to control her breathing. They moved to the basement shooting range, and Isabella fired her first rounds. The kickback surprised her. The noise, even with ear protection, made her head ring. But with each shot, she felt something shift inside her. Stronger, more grounded, more in control. Good. Dante stood just behind her, his hands guiding her arms. "Now again. Breathe slowly. Aim center mass. Squeeze, don't pull." Bang. The bullet landed near the center of the target. "Better." There was something in his voice that sounded like pride. "You have a natural instinct." "I don't want an instinct for killing people." "It's not about killing," Dante said. He took the weapon and secured it carefully. "It's about survival. In a perfect world, you'll never have to use this. But if the worst happens, if you're ever in a situation where someone tries to hurt you or Danny, I refuse to leave you helpless." Isabella nodded. She understood. "Show me more." And he did. For hours, Dante taught her how to think like someone from his world, how to notice threats before they materialized, how to read a room, how to protect Danny if something went wrong. It was like learning a completely new language, the language of violence and survival. When they finally went back upstairs, Isabella was exhausted. But she felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. Powerful. For 6 years, she had been a fugitive, running from Dante's world, always one step from disaster. Now she had decided to become something else. Not because she wanted to be part of the violence, but because she realized the only way to truly protect her family was to understand the dangers they faced. That night, when she put Danny to bed, he looked up at her with his big brown eyes and said, "Mama, you're brave." Isabella froze. "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" "Because I saw you today, when the bad man had me. You weren't scared. You saved me." Tears filled her eyes. "I will always protect you," she said. "Always." "I know." Danny snuggled against her. "You and Papa are like superheroes." Superheroes. If only it were that simple. But for Danny, in his child's world where love was a shield and his parents were invincible, that was exactly what they were. And Isabella decided she would do whatever it took to be worthy of that faith. 48 hours after the attack, Dante called Isabella to his office. She found him standing at the window, watching the garden below where Danny played with Zeus under the eyes of 6 guards disguised as groundskeepers. "It's over," Dante said without turning. Isabella felt her heart quicken. "What do you mean?" "Russo is dead. We eliminated him 2 hours ago at his home in Milan. His second-in-command as well. His organization is in chaos. Within a week, the Russo family will cease to exist." Isabella should have felt something. Horror, revulsion, something. Instead, she felt only relief. "And the others? Your other enemies?" They received the message. Now Dante turned, and on his face was something triumphant. "In the last 48 hours, we eliminated 12 high-value targets across 5 families. It was the most coordinated operation in our organization's history. Now everyone knows, touch my family, and there is no place on earth you can hide. Then we're safe. As safe as this world allows." Dante came to her and took her hands. "Isabella, I know this isn't the life you wanted. I know it's not a fairy tale. But I can promise you this. No one, and I mean no one, will dare harm you or Danny now. I've built such a legend, such a fear around this family, that to even attempt it would be suicide. Isabella looked into his eyes and saw the truth there. Dante genuinely believed he had secured their safety. And perhaps, in this brutal world, he was right. Perhaps the only way to be safe was to be too frightening to attack. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we build a life. Dante reached into his pocket and produced the small velvet box he had shown her on the rooftop. He opened it. The emerald ring caught the light. Isabella Moretti, will you marry me? Not because you have to. Not because you have no choice. But because you want to. Because you see a future where we're a real family. Isabella looked at the ring. Then at Dante. Then through the window at Danny, laughing in the garden. So much had changed in these past weeks. The woman she had been, the fugitive who believed freedom was everything, now understood something different. Sometimes love meant accepting imperfection. Sometimes family meant finding safety in the most unexpected places. Will you tell Danny everything? She asked. When he's older, about who you are, what you do. I'll tell him the truth. All of it. And then I'll give him a choice, the choice I never had. He can enter the business if he wants to. Or he can choose a completely different path. Whatever he decides, I'll support it. And if he chooses my world, I'll teach him to do it better. With less violence. With more honor. With a code my father never gave me. Dante pressed her hands. But that's years from now. Right now I just want to give him a childhood. Give us a chance to be a family. Isabella took a deep breath. This was the moment. The point of no return. If she said yes, she accepted everything that came with being Dante Ferretti's wife. The danger. The complexity. The life lived on both sides of the law. But she looked at the man in front of her. And she saw more than a crime boss. She saw the man who had searched for her for 6 years. The man who had held his son for the first time with tears running down his face. The man who had reorganized his entire empire to protect his family. The man who loved her with an intensity that sometimes stole the breath right out of her lungs. Yes, she whispered. And the word was equal parts surrender and liberation. Yes, I'll marry you. The joy that lit Dante's face was like sunlight breaking after a storm. He took the ring from the box and slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the old gold warm against her skin, the emerald catching the light. You won't regret this, he said, kissing her hand, then her wrist, then her lips. I will spend the rest of my life making sure of that. Don't promise me happiness, Isabella said, her hands in his hair. Promise me truth. Promise me loyalty. Promise me that this family always comes first. That I promise with my life. They kissed then, long and deep, years of pain and separation dissolving into the promise of something new. When they finally parted, Dante cupped her face in his hands. We need to tell Danny. Right now. He deserves to know that his parents are really, truly together. They found Danny in the garden, building something from twigs and leaves. When he looked up and saw them coming, hand in hand, his whole face ignited. Does that mean you're not angry at each other anymore? He asked with a child's perfect simplicity. Isabella laughed through her tears. No, sweetheart. We're not angry at each other. In fact, Papa and I have something to tell you. They both knelt down in front of Danny. Dante took one of the boy's small hands. Isabella took the other. Danny, Dante began, his voice thick. You know how you always said you wanted us to be a real family, like the families you see on television? Danny nodded, very serious. Well, today your mama said yes to a very important question. She agreed to be my wife, which means we're going to be a family, a real family, ours, forever. Danny looked between them, his young mind processing. Then slowly, so slowly, and then all at once, the most enormous, genuine smile broke across his face. Really? We're going to live together? All three of us. Forever? And I can call you Papa all the time. All the time, Dante confirmed. His voice cracked. Every single day. Danny launched himself forward and threw his arms around both of them at once, his small arms barely reaching around them, and held on. Isabella looked at Dante over the top of their son's head. Dante was crying. For the first time in all the years she had known him, she saw tears on the face of Dante Ferretti. Mama, Papa, Danny said from somewhere between them, I love you. We love you too. Isabella and Dante said at exactly the same moment. And then they laughed through their tears. They stayed that way for a long time. A family made whole at last. 6 years of pain and separation beginning, slowly, tenderly, to heal. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Dante organized a wedding, a private ceremony in the villa's gardens, with only a handful of close friends and family. Isabella wore a simple white dress, elegant without being excessive. Danny was the ring bearer, carrying the rings with a seriousness that made everyone smile. When Dante slid the wedding band onto her finger and spoke his vows, Isabella realized this was the moment she had been moving toward without knowing it. From the very first day, she met Dante Ferretti in a small cafe in Milan, when he was simply a handsome stranger who had bought her an espresso, not yet knowing who he really was. From that moment, her life had been on a collision course with this one. "I take you, Isabella, as my wife," Dante said, his voice steady and clear. "I promise to protect you, to love you, and to cherish you for every day I have left. I promise to be the father Danny deserves. I promise to be the man who makes you choose to stay, day after day. I take you, Dante, as my husband," Isabella replied, her own voice trembling. "I promise to stand beside you in good times and hard ones. I promise to be your partner in building this family. I promise never to run again." When they kissed as husband and wife, the quiet applause of their guests was drowned out by Danny shouting at the top of his lungs, "My mama and papa got married." The reception was filled with laughter and music and beautiful food. Isabella danced with Dante, their bodies moving in perfect harmony, as if all the years apart had never happened. She danced with Danny, her little boy stepping cheerfully on her feet, his face blazing with happiness. She even danced with Marco, the loyal guard who had become something like an uncle to Danny over these past weeks. As the night grew late and the guests began to leave, Isabella found herself standing on the same balcony where Dante had proposed just weeks before. The city stretched before her, millions of lights reminding her that the world was vast beyond their small, precious bubble of happiness. "Are you thinking about escaping?" Dante joined her, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. Isabella smiled and took hers. "No," she said. "Actually, for the first time in 6 years, I'm not thinking about escaping at all. Progress." Dante raised his glass. "To not escaping." "To not escaping," she echoed. They drank in a silence that was comfortable and full and warm. Finally, Isabella said, "Dante, I need to tell you something. You can tell me anything. I'm still afraid. Every morning I wake up and wonder if today is the day your world breaks through and destroys what we've built. Every day I wonder if Danny will one day see too much, learn too much." "I know," Dante said. He placed his hand over hers. "I'm afraid too. Every day I'm afraid of failing you, of missing something, of losing you again. So how do we live with it? How do we carry the fear? We live in spite of it." He turned to her, his free hand cradling her face. "We live each day the best we can. We love our son. We love each other. We hope it's enough. And if it's not, at least we had this. This moment. This family. This love." He kissed her gently. "That's more than most people ever get." Isabella rested her head on his shoulder, watching the stars. He was right. There were no guarantees. No promise that his world would never find them again. But there was this quiet night. This family built from the ruins of the past. "I love you," she whispered. "Even when I shouldn't. Even when it complicates everything." "I love you," Dante answered. "Always. Forever." They stood there for a long time. 2 souls broken by life, held together now by something stronger than fear or doubt. Love. Family. Purpose. The morning after the wedding, Isabella woke in Dante's arms, now officially her husband. And for the first time in years, she didn't reach for an escape route. She didn't count the days until she could run. She got up, wrapped herself in a robe, and went to Danny's room. He was already awake, rolling around on the floor with Zeus. "Mama." His face lit up. "Is it real? Are we actually a family now?" Isabella sat beside him and pulled him into her arms. "Yes, sweetheart. We're really, truly a family. You, me and Papa, forever." "Forever is a really long time," Danny said, thinking about it. "The longest time there is." She kissed the top of his head. "But I think we're ready for it." Dante appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching them both with an expression of pure, unguarded love. "Buongiorno, my family." "Buongiorno, Papa." Danny scrambled up and ran to him. Dante caught him and held him close. Isabella watched father and son together, and something settled deep inside her chest. This was right. This was where they were always supposed to be. Not running, not hiding, but here, in the eye of the storm, safe within it. Life in the months that followed settled into a new kind of normal. Danny started at a new school, one of the best in Krakow, with discreet security patrolling the grounds. Dante continued his business, but he spent more time at home, more time present. Isabella found herself drawn into his legitimate enterprises, her intelligence and instincts making her a real partner in that world. Some nights, late in the dark, Isabella lay awake beside Dante and wondered if she had made the right choice. And then she thought of Danny's smile, of how her son had bloomed in these past months. She thought of the way Dante looked at her, as if she were his entire world. And she knew, despite the fear, despite the doubt, despite the beautiful, complicated, imperfect life they lived together, she was exactly where she was meant to be. A few months after the wedding, Isabella discovered she was pregnant. She told Dante in his office, holding out the test for him to see. She watched his face move through a dozen emotions in the space of a few seconds. Shock, joy, fear, love. Another child, he breathed, his hand trembling as it hovered near her still flat stomach. You're giving me another child. Are you happy? Isabella asked suddenly, uncertain. Happy. Dante laughed, and the sound was pure and limitless. Isabella, I'm beyond happy. There are no words. This time I'll be here for every moment. Every kick. Every movement. I won't miss a single second. Tears ran down Isabella's cheeks. Years of pain and regret beginning, at last, to heal. It's a girl, she said quietly. I found out today. We're having a girl. Dante sank to his knees before her, both hands cradling her belly, his forehead resting gently against it. A girl, he repeated in wonder. A little girl who will look like you. Have your eyes, your heart, your strength. He looked up, and his own eyes were wet. And your stubbornness. Isabella laughed through her tears. The poor thing never had a chance. Thank you, Dante said softly. Thank you for this second chance. For this family. For all of it. When they told Danny, his response was exactly what they expected. A baby sister? For real? Can I teach her everything I know? Everything good that you know? Isabella said with a smile. No bad influences. I promise. Danny was already planning, already imagining every wonderful thing he would show his little sister. The pregnancy went smoothly, each month bringing new wonders. Isabella bloomed. Dante was attentive to the point of being wonderfully, comically overprotective, worrying about every small symptom, insisting on the best doctors, the best food, all the rest she needed. You're overdoing it, Isabella told him one afternoon when he guided her firmly away from helping Maria in the kitchen and onto the sofa, arranging pillows around her like armor. There is no such thing as overdoing it when it comes to my pregnant wife, Dante said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. Can you let me do this? Can you let me take care of you? Isabella looked at this man, this powerful, dangerous, deeply complicated man, fussing over her pillow arrangement, and she felt a wave of love so intense it nearly knocked the breath out of her. I love you, she said simply. Dante went still. He looked at her. Say it again. I love you. Not because I have to. Not because I'm trapped here. But because despite everything, all your flaws, all your darkness, all the danger you carry, I would choose you. Every time. I would choose you. Dante leaned in and kissed her with a tenderness that made her feel like the most precious thing in the world. And I would choose you, he whispered against her lips. In every life. In every universe. I would always choose you. 7 months later, on a warm June night, Isabella gave birth to a daughter. The labor was long and hard, but when she finally held the baby in her arms, tiny and perfect and covered in dark hair, every moment of it was worth it entirely. Sophia, Isabella whispered, studying the small, flawless face. Her name is Sophia. Sophia Ferretti, Dante repeated, his voice thick with emotion, as he reached out to touch his daughter's tiny hand. Sophia curled her fingers around his. Something fundamental and ancient moved across his face. My daughter. Danny was allowed in for a brief visit. He was enchanted. She's so small, he breathed. Can I hold her? I promise I'll be really, really careful. They helped him settle into a chair, and placed Sophia gently in his arms. He looked down at his sister with pure awe on his face. "Hi, Sophia. I'm your big brother. I promise I'll always protect you, just like Mama and Papa protect us." Isabella looked at Dante across the room, and they shared a look over their children's heads that needed no words at all. This was everything they had ever wanted. A family, love, a home that was safe, even in the middle of the storm. "Thank you," Isabella said softly to Dante. "For what?" "For not giving up. For searching for me. For loving me enough to fight for us." Dante leaned in and kissed her gently. "Thank you for letting me find you. For giving me this family. For staying." "I'm not running anymore," Isabella said. And for the first time in 6 years, the words felt absolutely, completely true. "Never again." "I know." Dante smiled. And it was a smile free of shadows, free of the weight of his world. "You're home now. And just as you've stopped running, I will never let you go." "Promise or threat?" Isabella asked softly, a warmth in her eyes. "Both," Dante answered, kissing her again. "Always both." And so, in a private hospital room in Krakow, surrounded by her children and her love and a peace she had spent 6 years believing she didn't deserve, Isabella Ferretti finally found what she had been searching for. Her running days were over. The shadows were behind her. This was a new life. A life built on something stronger. A life where love and family were worth fighting for, worth staying for. A life where even in a world of darkness, you could find your light. And when she closed her eyes that night, Dante's arms around her, little Sophia sleeping in the crib beside the bed, and Danny safe down the hall, Isabella felt something she hadn't felt in 6 long years. She felt home.